HowExpert! Top 10 bladesmithing, knife and sword and blade making tips. HowExpert publishes quick how-to guides on all topics from A to Z by everyday experts. Visit howexpert.com to learn more. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more HowExpert Top 10 videos in the future. Moving on, let's talk about the HowExpert Top 10 bladesmithing, knife and sword and blade making tips. Number 10. Make sure your metal is hot. If your workpiece isn't at least dark orange, don't take it out of the forge. Starting out, it can be really exciting, and you'll want to start beating that metal with your hammer as soon as possible. But forging is all about patience. If you pull your metal out of the forge and it's still gray or it's cherry red, that's not a good forging temperature, and it'll just make little hammer marks on your piece. Look at the color of your steel each time you pull it out of the forge to make sure when you hit it with your hammer, it'll actually form with your strikes and not just give you a workout. Number 9. Tend to your flame. While making sure you're keeping your metal inside of the forge long enough is important, so is ensuring the flame's hot enough to get your metal to a nice orange color. Steel needs a fire hotter than 2,150 degrees Fahrenheit, so you need to make sure it has enough air and fuel to keep it above that temperature. Spraying charcoal with a mist of water before throwing it into your forge is a good way to make sure that they burn hotter and longer. Don't drench them, but get them a little wet, and they'll burn so hot they can melt your steel if you don't watch it. Number 8. Clean your forge. After every use, you should clean out the ash from your forge. If you don't regularly clean out the ashes, you could clog the airflow, or better yet, cause your forge to shoot sparks everywhere when you light it next. It's not fun when you're trying to put your blade in a forge and 1,000 little yellow sparks fly out and burn through your clothes. Taking a shovel and scooping out excess ash every day will make your life so much easier in the long run. Number 7. Brush scale off your metal before you hit it. Brush the black fire scale off your workpiece before you start hitting it with your hammer. After you place your piece in the forge, a black coating will form around it, called fire scale. It's just oxidation. But if you don't get it off with a wire brush before you start swinging, you're going to have that scale flying off in all directions. That stuff's hot, and if it goes flying, chances are some of it will land on you, and scale will stick to your skin and give you nasty burns. Taking a second to brush it off before you go in with the hammer is the best thing to do. Number 6. Watch for heat distortion. When metal gets really hot, it tends to slightly distort in one direction or another. Make sure you're keeping an eye on it, especially during your hardening and annealing stages. It can be very frustrating when you're trying to make a straight sword and all of a sudden it starts to curve because of the heat it's undergoing. Some smiths, such as Japanese blade makers, actually embrace the distortion with the curves of katanas. As long as you keep an eye out for it, you can quickly fix it or even embrace it as part of your project. Just don't completely ignore it and let that distortion get too out of hand. Number 5. Start with basic tools. You want to start off with a basic forge, hammer, tongs, and anvil. It can be very exciting when you first start off, and you'll want to get your hands on high-tech tools such as power hammers or fancy forges with temperature controls. But you will get overwhelmed quickly, and they also cost a lot of money. Stick with the simple tools blacksmiths used for thousands of years: a coal or charcoal forge, a simple iron anvil, a half-peen hammer, and a pair of tongs is all you need. You'll be able to hone your skills better with the basics. Once you get a knack for the trade, then you can put some money into fancy tools that will allow you to expand your foundation of bladesmithing. Number 4. Use borax powder. When heating up your steel, it's always best to sprinkle a little borax on it to purify and clean the metal. Especially when folding steel, It's always a good idea to purify your metal with borax powder so pockets of iron oxide or other impurities aren't riddled throughout your piece. If you have impurities, you won't know until the final steps, when you go to harden your steel. All those impurities will cause cracks and can even make your blade explode when you quench it. It's better to be safe than sorry, and cover your orange metal with powder and let it melt into the steel. Number 3. Be patient. Blacksmithing is all about timing and patience. Without it, you're going to mess up and either ruin your work or hurt yourself. Not only when you're forging it on the anvil, but when you grind your blade afterwards as well. When cleaning up the bevel or adding the edge to your blade, don't use power tools. Use a metal file or hand sand it with some sandpaper. You can take off too much material if you're using an angle grinder or belt sander, and you risk the chance of getting yourself hurt when you have to hold the blade in awkward positions if you end up using a belt sander. Remember, you're trying to make a good-looking blade, not one that took you only 2 hours. So take your time and minimize your mistakes. Number 2. Stay safe. Blacksmithing and other trades are very dangerous when people don't take precautions. Toxic fumes can come from the forge. You can get easily burned, or your shop could even catch fire. Make sure you are wearing personal protective equipment, such as leather gloves, a leather coat, steel-toed boots, and eye protection. If you have a lot of hair, make sure you're wearing a hat, bandana, or even a welder's cap so your hair doesn't catch on fire. Also, don't use a forge without proper fumigation. It's best to build one outside so the gas disperses into the atmosphere. But if you have to build one inside, make sure you have a fume hood or a fan of some sort to blow the toxic fumes outside. Number 1. Don't get discouraged. You'll make lots of mistakes and ruin a lot of projects, but don't give up. Blacksmithing is going to be full of project-ruining errors. You'll accidentally melt your blades, grind off too much material, or worst of all, drop a hardened steel blade on the way to being annealed, and it will shatter like glass. These will happen, and they will be very frustrating, but we can only learn from these mistakes. You'll get better over time, and you'll make mistakes less and less, but you just can't quit. If you liked our video, be sure to click like and subscribe for more HowExpert Top 10 videos for all topics from A to Z in the future. Also, let us know what other topics you want us to do a HowExpert Top 10 video in the future in the comments below. Thank you, have an amazing day, and take care. HowExpert publishes quick how-to guides on all topics from A to Z by everyday experts. Visit howexpert.com to learn more.